to another exciting episode of the Story of with Manny Lagunes. Manny, well, thank you for being here. Welcome.
As always, Bowie, I'm glad to be here.
So on last episode, we were kind of getting down to the nitty gritty. You know, this is the point where you were about to go that quote unquote 60 days in here, and
Okay.
I mean, stuff was about to get real.
Yeah.
You was about to be singing "Locked Up, They Won't Let Me Out." No, they won't let me out. No, this is the point where you went to jail. You went to prison. You went to
Yes.
you went to the big house. Well, in your case, the little house. I mean, stuff really got real. So I want you to break down this climax, this point. What happened while you were locked up?
Okay. So, last episode, again, if you haven't already, go check it out. Bowie Films. But last episode, we sort of talked about how it was that they picked me up, right, and what my booking process sort of went like. Now, once I got to um, Calhoun County, jail, prison, whatever, Calhoun County, um, there was a something that I had actually never been before. I mean, I had been locked up a couple of times for short periods of time, 24, 48 hours, little things like that, right? But my time at Calhoun was not really determined. It wasn't sure how long I was going to be there, so I had to go through a process called classification, which is where they really observe you for a period of I don't know, like maybe 24 to 36 hours, and sort of a pod, a jail pod, right? And if you don't know what a pod is, it's not a collection. It's just where there's a bunch of cells together, right? You have pod A, pod B, and then there's cells in those pods. And they put you in a pod just to observe how you are adjusting sort of to jail life, I guess is what you could say it. And I had to go through that, and that was a really eye opener for me because once I got in there and they started, asking me questions and sort of observing us, it was like, okay, I'm gonna be here for a minute. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. I'm gonna be here. So I went through classification. Eventually, they did place me in Pod B, which is where they would hold most what you would call non-immediate threats, right? Prisoners who aren't really dangerous. But this was all immigration related. All the prisoners in Pod B were being deported, facing deportation, awaiting trial for deportation, stuff like that, right? And things in Calhoun generally were really, um, how you would say, low key. Everybody was just there to sort of, see what the future held for them. We weren't there to, cause any problems and let alone make problems for anybody else. Um, I guess the biggest thing that happened right while I was at Calhoun was there was this guy from Somalia, that's in Africa, who was also being deported from Detroit. And I really forget like the details of it all, but essentially he got into it with one of the guards, and something led to another thing, and he refused, I guess, to go back into his cell. The Somalian guy, he refused to go to follow orders, go back into his cell. So, like three other officers came into the pod with like I don't know what it was. It was like pepper spray, I think, um, and literally like locked down the whole pod, like just because this one guy would not follow directions.
Well,
And I
I'm
mean,
sure they didn't
it
come
sounds
in there
kind
with
of
Febreze. I'm pretty sure it probably was pepper spray. Did they actually like release the gas?
no, they didn't. But it was like in. Here's the thing: we had like free time where we were allowed to go anywhere in the pod. I mean, it wasn't a big, like pod or anything. It was a small, sort of again, I guess you could call it closed community or whatever. So we had free time and we were allowed to go, in the little dining tables or play cards if you had cards, or even go to the TV room for most of the day. Um, so this was during our free time. out of nowhere, we just started hearing the commotion of two, guys following and the arguing, and the officer eventually said, you know what, go to your cell. You're getting locked up for the rest of the day. The Somalian didn't Somalian, I don't know. He didn't like that, and like out of the blue, like I guess they were just on standby. Three officers came in through the front door with their pepper spray and started screaming, "Everybody back to their cells! Everybody unlocked!" And everybody, we looked around like, "What the fuck is like? What is going on? Like this is like." And at first, I stood there like, "No, like what are you talking about? This is free time." And then once I saw that pepper spray, I said, "Oh, they're for real. I'll see you guys tomorrow or something." Like I was not about to get pepper sprayed. But actually, this was a good sort of experience for me because I wasn't just at Calhoun. So again, if you haven't already, go back and watch episode 6. I was fighting a couple criminal cases in Washington County. Now, Washington County gave me a PR bond, which is known as a personal recognizance bond. Basically means that you acknowledge to stay out of trouble and that you will show up to court, and you're not going to be in jail. It's a type of bond that you're on. So I wasn't sort of there was no warrant out for my arrest or anything like that. But since I was already in immigration custody, Washington County took this opportunity to sort of proceed with my hearings, and essentially I was transferred from Calhoun County to Washington County Jail a couple of times throughout my 3 month stay at Calhoun, and the environment changed from one prison to another because Calhoun was like all immigration related cases, and people again it was all cool. But once I got to Washington County, I was placed in the felon pod. I was placed in the felon pod. People who were fighting heavy cases, who were either getting a bunch of time, who were doing a bunch of time, or just got done doing a bunch of time, or who were about to get a bunch of time. You know what I'm saying? So I was put in that, and again, things changed drastically. One of the things that I mentioned a little bit to Michael about this, to Bowie, the thing that I guess stuck with me the most of that experience was there was a time when a guy, one inmate, sort of stabbed another inmate in the ear with a golf pencil. A golf pencil is like a little tiny pencil with no eraser, just tiny pencils that they give you so you can write commissary or you can write little whatever cards, mail, whatever. He grabbed a little golf pencil and stuck it inside this guy's ear. I think it was over some cake, like the little dessert cakes that they give you in jail. As soon as that happened, like I was sitting, I don't know, maybe a good 7 or 8 feet away from them at the next table. As soon as I saw that happen, went down, I got up and I got right on the ground. I didn't even question. I didn't even have time to like, shit, like it's going down. No. As soon as I saw that happen, I got up and got my ass on the ground because I knew within 2 seconds of me doing that, the pod was filled with officers, and there was like, come on, like I knew what was about to happen. So if the situation at Calhoun with the Somali and the officers hadn't gone down, and again, it didn't escalate to anything serious, that situation at Washington County, I probably would not have been. I probably would have been instigating. I probably would have been in like, oh shit, like something, and probably gotten my ass in more trouble. But
Well,
because I had already been through something a little bit similar to confrontations in jail, I knew I was like, shit's gonna get real in here. Officers are gonna come in, pepper spray the whole thing, the whole place, tase everybody. So I'm just gonna get my ass on the ground, avoid any further conflict, and just get my ass on the ground. And I did. I never saw that either of those guys again, actually, because again, I was being transferred. But
did,
it
did
was a
you
it was
did
nothing.
you ever get to a point where other people were like picking on you or coming for you, being that new guy? I mean, for me, looking at like 60 days in, I saw that as being a common thing that happened. Were you ever at a point where you were nervous or on edge because somebody else you had a conflict or a run in with for anything in that time period?
When I was at Washington County, most definitely, yes. Again, I was in there with guys who were fighting heavy cases or just got done doing a bunch of time. So um, there was no immediate conflict, but there was almost tension in the air at all times. Um, the felon pod where they house felons, um, each cell is a one man cell for obvious reasons. They want to avoid conflict as much as possible because again, there's just a certain tension in the air hanging over the time. When I got there though, I made sure that everybody knew sort of why I was there. I kind of approached some of the guys playing cards at the table and And that's another thing that's really funny is that cards are a big part of prison life, I guess. Um, but I approached some of the guys and I told them, you know what, I'm not here for a long time. I'm gonna be here for a minute, maybe for a week, 5 days, and then they'll take me back to Calhoun. So it's like, you guys don't even want to get used to me. You don't have to worry about me taking space or nothing. You guys don't have to get in. They were for the most part pretty cool about it. They knew. Some of them actually told me, like, at the time I had long hair. They told me, oh, we didn't even think you would be Mexican. We thought you were like Native American, like this and that. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, yeah, I'm facing
Do,
deportation.
does that play a big role, like race? I know, like looking at 60 Days, and I guess I'm comparing a lot to that because that's the closest I've ever come to
Sure.
like jail life. Was race a big thing inside of uh, this place that you were at in terms of black versus white and Mexican, blah blah blah?
In Washington County, I think so, a little bit to a certain extent, especially in the felon pods. I think so. I mean, these pods are not big pods. Again, just trying to reduce conflict as much as they can. So they're not housed with like 60 inmates. No, the felon pods at Washington County usually hold about maybe 25, 30 inmates, and they're not always at full capacity. So you don't really see it break up like that too much. But there's definitely sort of like little cliques that that form in there. And I would want to say that, yeah, race plays a big part of it. Especially when tensions are high all the time, all 24 hours a day. Is like people. Like, here's the thing: like, you don't get any outside time, any recreation time. You don't get nothing. Like, the Washington County felon pod is so fucked up, and excuse my language, that when I got back to Calhoun, I was almost grateful. You know, I was grateful to be back in Calhoun. I know it's still prison, it's still jail, but when they would take me back to Calhoun, it's like, bro, like, thank you for bringing me back. Like, I did not want to stay there at all. There was just so much, uh, just bullshit going on at all times. And I just want to show this really quickly. This is a picture I have of me when I would make my sort of my video calls from Calhoun. So you can see I had the long hair, and this is why I guess people thought,
Who is that
maybe I
Mexican woman?
was. Actually, Bowie, that is me. I
that
am a grown man.
that looks
No, but
nothing like you.
yeah, again, this was a tough time in my life.
How
I
old were
lost
you during
weight.
that time?
22. I was 22 years old. 22 years old. Um, I lost a lot of weight in those 3 months I was locked up. I lost a lot of weight. I got severely depressed. Not to say that I wasn't awakened by something in there, sort of you need to get your shit together, because it made me realize a lot of things about myself, about the wrong that I was doing, just about the situations that I had placed myself in. It became a point in my life where it was like, I can't point my finger at anybody else. I caused this. I decided to take this road, and this is where it led me, and nobody else is paying the price but me. So it was a real eye opener for me in that sense. And I don't know how much time we have left, but I also want to talk a little bit about what happened after Calhoun, because after Calhoun, there's a whole process that goes on to being shipped. I guess being shipped is a good word to use, I would say, back home to Mexico, wherever you're from. Like I mentioned earlier, it wasn't just like Mexican people at Calhoun. There were people from Somalia, from Russia, Middle East, all parts of Latin America, um, Asians as well. Like, it's crazy. It's crazy. It was so crazy seeing so many people just housed in one unit together. So there's a whole process for you to sort of be shipped back home, and it
Well,
all ends
well,
up
well,
being
well. Before you go into that, because we are running short on time, and I do kind of want to savor that moment.
sure.
When you lead into that point of being brought back and what happened with that. So before we get out of here, was there anything else that kind of happened that stands out inside of your mind? Unique people that you came across that either inspired you or had an impact on you, whether positive or negative, while your time inside of prison. If you could
Yeah,
elaborate.
yeah, I understand what you're saying, sort of, and I'm gonna say it like this: there's a couple of guys that I was locked up with at Calhoun, who I still keep in touch with today.
Really?
Because yes, yeah, definitely, simply because just the bonds that we created, whether it was over playing spades, or sharing a meal, sharing commissary items, or just looking out for one another. Again, things like Calhoun were not necessarily rough, but nonetheless, it's still prison, it's still a jail. So um, just the brotherhood that came out of that. And these are people who I really sort of hold dear to my heart, because they looked out for me in a time where they didn't have to, and they sort of gained my respect, and I'm sure I gained theirs as well.
Well, that's good to hear. And I saw that kind of thing happen on 60 Days and another reference because that's the closest I've ever been to that, where those
Yeah.
kinds of bonds and relationships are kind of grown and found. So that's kind of good to know that it was an eye opener, and a lot of people, they say that jail is demeaning, how it brings you down because of the treatment and everything else. And I'm sure that you'll still say that, but there is the positive of the people that you come across that are positive, not the negative ones that had that impact. Um, like I said, I do want to savor that next episode, kind of to talk about your processing for being brought back and what that was like, and then what it was like once you got back. Um, as always, it's a pleasure having you on the show and hearing you, talk about your story. And we're winding down to the end of it. But I can tell, especially at a young age, some people go through things at different stages inside their life, and it's good to go through it at a young age and kind of learn from it, from having without having like a severe consequence where you're locked up for 30 years or anything. And even being deported, that is a big step, but you still have the option to work on coming back if you wanted to, because I know that your family's here and you're inside of Mexico. So is there any closing thoughts that you kind of want to add to before we close out the show?
No, as always, comment, like, subscribe, Movie Films, and thank you for giving me the platform to sort of tell my story. And I can't wait to see, or not to see, but just to close things out, to let you guys know how everything sort of played out for me.
Well, thanks again for being on the show. Thank you everybody else for tuning in. As he said, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that bell, do all that jazz. And this is another exciting episode of the story of with Manny Lagunes. Manny, thanks again for being here, and everybody else. We'll see you guys next week. Whatever you do, don't